ever felt that just overwhelming pressure of information overload?
Oh, absolutely.
You're sifting through endless articles, emails, data, just trying to figure out what truly matters, what's signal and what's noise.
Yeah.
It's a universal challenge, isn't it? How do you cut through all that clutter to get to the core insights, the things that, drive real impact and help you achieve really ambitious goals?
Well, that struggle to prioritize, to know where to put your energy, it's incredibly common. And it's not just individuals, right? Many organizations, from tiny startups to huge global corporations, face it every single day. They might have these grand visions, but the path to actually getting there can be pretty murky.
And that often leads to disengagement, doesn't it?
It really does. In fact, studies show less than a third of U.S. workers feel truly engaged with their work. It's quite stark.
And that feeling of disengagement, of, potential just unfulfilled,
Yeah.
that's precisely why you asked us to take this deep dive today. Our mission is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from a collection of sources, all centered around this really powerful framework.
A framework that genuinely changed how giants like Google operate.
Right. And it's transforming organizations across basically every sector now. We're talking about objectives and key results, or OKRs. We're here to give you a shortcut, really, to understanding this system and, crucially, how you can apply it, whether you're just managing yourself, small team, or, a whole large enterprise.
And what's so fascinating about this framework isn't just its structure, but the impact it has. We'll see that through some, pretty surprising stories.
Like what?
We'll explore everything from a 24-year-old intern back at Intel who had this eye-opening experience with public goal setting, to a rock star using this very framework to help save lives in Africa. You'll even hear how a pizza company is using Roblox and OKRs for continuous improvement.
Yeah.
These aren't just like feel-good anecdotes. They really highlight how OKRs empower organizations to achieve things that often seem impossible.
That sounds incredibly powerful. So with that potential in mind, let's get down to it. Where did this revolutionary framework actually begin, and what are its fundamental building blocks?
Okay, so at its core, an OKR system is designed to solve that exact problem: unclear goals and disengagement.
Right.
It starts with two simple yet really profound components. First, you have the objective.
Okay.
This defines what you want to achieve. Think of it as your destination. It needs to be tangible, objective, unambiguous, and provide clear value. It sets the direction.
Okay, makes sense. The what, and then how do you know if you're actually, moving towards that objective?
Getting closer.
That's where the key results come in. They define how you measure progress towards that objective.
The how.
Exactly. And key results must be measurable, specific, time-bound, aggressive, yet realistic, and, this is crucial, outcome-focused. Outcome-focused, not just busy work.
Precisely. As Marissa Mayer famously put it, it's not a key result unless it has a number.
That single rule.
Yeah.
It simplifies so much, doesn't it?
It cuts through all the ambiguity, absolutely.
That number rule really clarifies things. It makes me wonder, though, how did such a powerful yet kind of simple idea actually come about? Our journey starts back at Intel in the 70s, right? With a man named Andy Grove.
The father of OKRs?
Often called that, yeah. And known as Intel's operator par excellence. What was his core philosophy? What drove this innovation?
Grove's philosophy was incredibly pragmatic. He basically said, it almost doesn't matter what you know. It's what you can do with whatever you know or can acquire and actually accomplish.
So focused on output, not just knowledge.
Relentlessly focused on output, especially for knowledge workers. And this is where a young John Doerr, who later became, a legendary Silicon Valley VC, enters the picture. Back in 1975, he was a 24-year-old intern at Intel. And Doerr was just mesmerized by Grove's formal goal setting. He actually typed out his first OKR on an IBM Selectric.
Oh, an IBM Select.
Publicly posted it on his Carol for everyone to see.
And he found that public display incredibly liberating, right? Suddenly he felt he could say no to distractions because his priorities were right there, clear, concrete, visible.
Exactly.
That transparency and focus.
It sounds like a really stark contrast to traditional management by objectives, MBOs, which were around then. What were the key differences that made Grove's IMEOs, what later became OKR, so different?
Yeah, you hit on a really crucial point there. Traditional MBOs were often annual, usually private, mostly top-down,
right,
and quite directly tied to compensation to your bonus.
Which sounds sensible on the surface, but...
But it often led to risk-averse behavior. Why would you set a super ambitious goal if missing it slightly means a smaller bonus? People played it safe.
Ah, makes sense. Grove's IMBOs, however, were usually quarterly, sometimes even monthly. They were public and transparent across the whole organization. And significantly, about 50% were created from the bottom up.
Bottom up, so not just dictated from the top.
Right, which fostered much greater engagement. And perhaps most importantly, they were largely divorced from compensation.
That seems radical.
It was a huge shift. It encouraged aggressive, aspirational goals without that constant fear of financial penalty if you didn't quite hit 100%.
So Grove wasn't just creating a framework. He was really instilling a discipline, a kind of OKR hygiene, as the sources call it. What were some of those foundational rules he laid down to make sure the system actually worked?
Yeah, he had several key ones. One was less is more. Limit yourself.
Focus.
Exactly. 3 to 5 objectives max, and maybe 5 or fewer key results for each objective. Ensures real focus. The temptation is always to have too many.
I can see that. What else?
He also emphasized set goals from the bottom up,
Yeah.
encourage teams and individuals to create roughly half their own OKRs.
That makes so much sense. Tapping into the people closest to the actual work.
It doesn't just foster engagement, it taps into the collective intelligence of the whole organization. People know what's achievable, what needs doing.
I also remember him stressing no dictating. OKRs are like a cooperative social contract. Key results are negotiated.
Right. It's about collective agreement. A goal isn't truly owned or achieved to its fullest potential if it's just imposed from above. Negotiation ensures buy-in, shared understanding.
Okay. And flexibility. Things change fast.
Absolutely. Another rule, stay flexible. If the market shifts or, the climate changes, you can modify or even discard key results mid-cycle. They're guardrails for direction, not chains binding you to an outdated path.
That's practical.
And maybe one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful rules, dare to fail.
Dare to fail. How does that work?
Grove asserted that aspirational OKRs should be uncomfortable, possibly even unattainable. They push you towards peak performance. His view was, if you're hitting 100% on everything all the time,
Your goals probably aren't ambitious enough.
exactly, you're not stretching.
That's a huge mindset shift. It really highlights the difference between OKRs for learning and pushing boundaries versus just, like, compliance or performance reviews.
Precisely, which leads directly to another rule. A tool, not a weapon. Meaning, don't use OKRs to beat people up during performance reviews. That connects back to decoupling from bonuses. It encourages risk-taking, prevents sandbagging. It's about self-pacing, self-assessment, learning, not a legal document for punishment.
Got it. And
Finally, Grove advocated for patience and resolve. He admitted Intel stumbled a lot initially. It takes time, maybe 4 or 5 quarterly cycles, to build what he called goal muscle.
So it's not a quick fix.
Definitely not. It's a fundamental change in how you operate.
Okay, so if we take these core principles, this OKR hygiene, what are the real superpowers that OKRs unleash within an organization? Let's start with superpower number 1. Focus and commit to priorities. Lots of goal systems claim to help with focus. But what's the unique mechanism here? What's the psychological shift that OKRs trigger, especially when leaders publicly commit, that makes this focus so much more effective than, say, just a traditional strategic plan filed away somewhere?
Well, I think it's the combination of focusing on the vital few, setting those aggressive yet realistic targets, and then that radical transparency.
Transparency again.
Yes, leaders must choose the few initiatives that will make a real difference, and then they have to publicly commit to those choices. Think about Google's mission, organize the world's information.
And make it universally accessible and useful. Huge mission.
Massive. And that top-line mission drives all their OKRs. It forces incredibly hard choices about what matters most right now. There just isn't room for everything. You have to focus.
Can you give us an example of how this commitment plays out, maybe beyond just the top-level mission?
Absolutely. Consider Rick Clow at YouTube. He was a product manager.
Right.
His team came up with a 6-month OKR to improve the site's login experience. Because back then, only a tiny fraction of users actually logged in, which hid a lot of YouTube's value.
Right.
Larry Page, Google's co-founder, heard about it. He didn't just approve it, he elevated it to a company-wide OKR, and he gave them a 3-month deadline instead of 6.
Whoa. Talk about pressure.
Immense pressure and focus. This wasn't just a leader nodding along, it was a public company-wide commitment. Everyone rallied to help, and they succeeded. It shows how top leadership's visible commitment, even to a product manager's goal, clarifies priorities for the entire organization.
That's a powerful example of top-down commitment really fueling action.
Yeah.
But what about the flip side? The challenge of saying no to good ideas when you're truly focused.
Oh, that's critical. It's one of the hardest parts. Take Brett Koff, co-founder of Remind, the education texting platform.
Okay.
He actually overcame ADHD, and his company's objectives were literally taped to his bathroom mirror. That's how focused he was. But Remind's story also shows how OKRs force ruthless focus. They had this highly requested, repeated message feature from teachers. Sounds useful, right?
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer.
But when they measured it against their core OKR for user engagement and growth, they realized it just wouldn't move the needle enough.
So they had to shelve it.
They made the tough call to shelve it. That's true focus. Prioritizing the needle-moving objectives over seemingly good but ultimately distracting ideas.
And often that commitment, that focus, it has to start with a renewed push from the top, right? It can fade.
Exactly. Look at Jeannie Kim, CEO of Nuna, the healthcare data company. She had this incredibly deep personal mission transforming healthcare, driven by her brother's severe autism and her family's struggles with Medicaid. But Nuna initially failed to implement OKRs effectively. They tried too much too soon. Kim learned, as she put it, doing too much too soon will definitely end in pain.
So what did she do?
She dramatically redoubled her own commitment. She started emailing, Slacking, even texting individuals about OKRs. She publicly shared her own OKRs. That visible accountability and personal commitment from the CEO, it turned the tide. It brought back that crucial focus.
That story really underscores a common pitfall, though. Achieving one goal, but maybe at the expense of another important one. How do OKRs help avoid those kind of one-dimensional goals that can have disastrous, unintended consequences?
Yes. It's through what Grove called paired key results, measuring basically both effect and counter effects.
Effect and counter effect.
Well, think of the Ford Pinto disaster. Engineers were reportedly under immense pressure to meet aggressive production demands, maybe skipping safety checks, leading to tragic consequences with the gas tank.
Right, I remember that.
Or, more recently, Wells Fargo creating millions of fraudulent accounts driven by these ruthless one-dimensional sales targets.
Terrible.
The solution is to pair KRs. For example, maybe you measure the number of new features shipped and the number of bugs reported.
Balancing speed and quality.
Exactly. Or maybe track sales revenue and customer retention or satisfaction. It ensures quality isn't sacrificed for quantity, prevents that dangerous tunnel vision.
That makes perfect sense. Pairing them keeps things in balance. Okay, so we've seen how OKRs sharpen focus. But how do they then take that clear focus and make sure everyone in a big company is pulling in the same direction, aligning all those individual efforts? Which brings us to superpower number 2, align and connect for teamwork.
This is where that transparency we keep mentioning really shines. Transparent, public OKRs from the CEO all the way down.
Why is alignment such a big deal?
Well, the alignment crisis in business is very real. Studies show only something like 7% of employees fully understand their company's strategy and how their work fits in.
Only 7%? That's shocking.
It is. And lack of alignment is consistently ranked as the #1 obstacle to actually executing strategy. It wastes enormous energy, causes friction. OKRs make everyone's objectives visible, which naturally sparks and strengthens collaboration. People see the connections.
It reminds me of that football team analogy in the source material. The general manager's objective, make money for the owner, key results, win the Super Bowl, and fill stands to 90% capacity.
Right.
And those KRs then cascade down. They become objectives for the head coach, win the Super Bowl, and the SVP of marketing, fill stands. They set their own KRs and so on. Sounds neat, but what are the common flaws you see in that kind of cascading? How do OKRs maybe improve on it?
Well, one common flaw is ending up with unmeasurable key results lower down. The marketing SVP's KR might be something vague like upgrade the team's branding or improve our media coverage.
How do you measure improve?
Exactly. OKRs force numbers, quantifiable outcomes. Beyond that, though, a top-line objective like make a wealthy person wealthier. Well, it might lack intrinsic motivation for the players or the ticket sellers, right?
Good point.
The best OKRs often come from insights outside the C-suite. And that transparent bottom-up element of OKRs means those valuable insights can be integrated, they can influence the direction. It's not just a rigid cascade.
You see this alignment challenge play out in growing companies, too. MyFitnessPal's co-founder, Mike Lee, described how in their early days, engineers were constantly getting pulled in different directions by competing priorities from different product managers.
Right, leading to inefficiency, missed deadlines.
Yeah, he mentioned a marketing OKR for personalized emails that failed because engineering priorities just weren't aligned. They were working on something else. How did OKRs help them fix that?
OKRs help them identify and fix those unacknowledged dependencies, as he called them.
Unacknowledged dependencies. I like that term.
When everyone's goals are public, it becomes immediately obvious when one team's objective relies on another team delivering a specific key result. It forces conversations, negotiation, synchronization.
And this works even at massive scale.
Absolutely. Look at Intuit. Atticus Tyson used OKRs to help them transition from desktop software to the cloud, from being a house of brands to a branded house.
Huge transitions.
Huge. OKRs became their Esperanto, as he put it, a shared language uniting global teams. Especially vital, he said, for connecting effectively with their teams in Bangalore, given the 13-hour time difference.
A common language for goals.
Exactly. Now they ask, if it doesn't fit our OKR template, why are we doing this? That brings a powerful level of clarity and alignment across a vast, complex organization.
That really drives home the power of transparent, connected goals. Okay, moving on to superpower number 3. Track for accountability. This is about OKRs being data-driven, right? Animated by check-ins, grading, reassessment, but all in a no-judgment accountability spirit. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means you're regularly looking at the numbers, the data. Research actually shows that making measured headway, seeing progress, is often more incentivizing than public recognition or even money.
Interesting. More than money.
Often, yes, in terms of sustained motivation. So regular check-ins, maybe weekly, are crucial. They prevent things from slipping through the cracks and allow for course correction. And remember, OKRs are guardrails, not chains.
Guardrails, not chains. I like that. Great example of that flexibility is, again, right, their early attempt at a peer-to-peer payment system.
Yeah, it was a total flop. He said no one used it.
So instead of stubbornly sticking with it because it was on their OKR sheet,
They quickly dropped it. They revised their OKR mid-cycle, pivoted to an event-driven system, which then, he said, started driving and growing like crazy. That's failing fast, but with purpose, learning, and adapting.
Okay, so tracking enables that agility. What about grading OKRs? How does that work without being judgmental?
Well, Google famously uses a 0.0 to 1.0 scale.
Right, 0.7 to 1.0 is green, good. 0.4 to 0.6 yellow, needs attention. 0.0 to 0.3 is red, missed the mark.
Exactly. But Intel, under Grove, had an even more aggressive view. Hitting 100% consistently meant your goals were probably set too low.
Because you weren't stretching enough.
Right. If you always hit 100%, you weren't pushing the boundaries. What's fascinating here, though, is how this objective data, the score, is often complemented by subjective self-assessment.
Ah, okay. How does subjective judgment fit into such a data-driven system? Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a PR manager. Their key result is to get 3 articles placed in national publications. They only managed to get 2 published. Objectively, that's a score of, say, 0.67, maybe yellow.
Go.
But one of those 2 articles happens to be a major cover story in the Wall Street Journal. Huge impact.
Ah, much bigger than just another article.
Exactly. So in their subjective self-assessment, they might give themselves a 0.9, explaining that they hit that one out of the park in terms of real impact. It's about combining the raw numbers with critical context and qualitative judgment.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just the number, it's the story behind it. And this data-driven rigor, this focus on measurement, it extends even to philanthropy, right? Like with Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation.
Absolutely. The Gates Foundation was, in essence, a massive $20 billion startup, and they applied intense data rigor to their mission.
How do you measure saving lives with data?
They used metrics like disability-adjusted life years, or daily. It's a way to quantify the burden of disease. Using that metric helped them measure impact and led them to focus heavily on things like vaccines, a highly impactful, measurable intervention.
Wow.
Bill Gates was known to turn down grant proposals if the goals weren't clear enough, if they couldn't clearly define and measure the intended impact. Patty Stonesifer, who worked there, described learning the hard way about measuring the wrong thing.
What?
Like, they developed a new type of yam seed that doubled production. Sounds great, right?
Yeah, amazing.
But nobody would use it because the yams took 4 times longer to cook at night, using up precious fuel. The initial data looked good, but the human observation, the real-world context, showed it wasn't working. They had to adjust. It underscores the need for meaningful metrics that reflect real impact.
That YAM example is perfect. It highlights that blend of hard data and understanding the actual real-world impact. Okay, building on rigorous tracking and accountability,
Yeah.
the final superpower is maybe the most exhilarating. Stretch for amazing. This is about motivating us to excel, to go beyond what we think is possible, testing limits, and crucially, affording the freedom to fail sometimes. Why are hard goals so much more effective?
Well, there's solid research behind it. Edwin Locke found decades ago that hard goals drive performance more effectively than easy ones.
Even if you don't always hit them.
Even if they're less often fully attained, yes. They lead to higher output and increased motivation. It's not just about hitting the target, it's about what aiming for that ambitious target does to inspire you and push you further than you thought you could go.
Intel's Operation Crush is like the legendary example of this, isn't it? Facing an existential threat from Motorola. How did they use an audacious goal to turn things around?
It was intense. Bill Davidow, leading their microcomputer division, set this incredibly audacious goal. 2,000 design wins for their new 8086 microprocessor in 1 year. That was 50% more than the previous year against a formidable competitor.
That sounds almost impossible.
It did. The rallying cry became basically, we have to crush the competition. They incentivized the sales reps with a trip for 2 to Tahiti if the company hit the goal.
Tahiti. Nice.
And then, mysteriously, colorful brochures for Tahiti started appearing in the salespeople's mailboxes at home. Peer pressure intensified. The result. They didn't just hit the 2,000 target, they blew past it with 2,300 wins. They routed Motorola. It showed how a huge stretch goal could galvanize an entire, complex organization with surprising agility.
Wow. That's incredible. And Google's Gospel of 10X under Larry Page takes this stretching idea even further, right? Believing in exponentially aggressive goals. How did that show up in a product we all use?
Oh, definitely. Think Gmail. When it launched, it offered 1 gigabyte of storage.
Which was huge back then.
Huge. Competitors like Hotmail were offering maybe 2 to 4 megabytes. Gmail offered 250 to 500 times more. It wasn't just incremental improvement, it was a 10x or even a 100x leap. It completely changed digital communication forever.
And then there's Google Chrome.
Right. Sundar Pichai's journey with Chrome. The initial goal for Chrome adoption, 20 million 7-day active users in the first year, seemed totally unachievable internally at the time.
But they aimed for it anyway.
They did. And alongside that user goal, they launched the V8 JavaScript engine project, specifically targeting a 10x improvement in browser speed.
Did they hit 10x?
They ultimately achieved 20x faster performance, a true moonshot that fundamentally changed the web browsing experience.
That's the power of 10x thinking. And YouTube, under Susan Wojcicki, set one of those big, hairy, audacious goals, a BHA.
Yes, a massive one. Reach 1 billion hours of daily watch time by the end of 2016. That was roughly a 10x increase from where they were.
A billion hours a day, that's staggering.
It really is. Christos Goudreau, a key engineering leader there, initially struggled to get his engineers to narrow their own goals to focus intensely on this one metric, but they committed to what they called principled stretching.
Principled stretching, what did that involve?
It meant they were willing to make some decisions that were actually watch time negative in the short term if they believed it was the right thing for the user or the platform long term.
Like what? Can you give an example?
For instance, they made the call to stop recommending certain types of, let's say, low-quality tabloid-style videos, even though those videos got a lot of clicks and watch time initially.
That sounds risky for a platform driven by watch time.
It was risky. It caused a dip at first. But their rationale was that it was better for the overall user experience, cut down on clickbait, and would build more trust and engagement in the long run.
And did it?
It did. Ultimately, that commitment to responsible growth, prioritizing user value over just hitting the short-term metric at any cost, actually led to increased watch time later on. It's an incredible story of stretching beyond just the raw numbers, proving that sometimes doing the right thing for users leads to amazing, unexpected results, even by the metric you were willing to sacrifice temporarily.
Wow. All these examples really underscore how OKRs, especially when combined with continuous performance management and a strong culture, they're more than just a goal-setting tool, aren't they? They really are a system for operating excellence.
Absolutely.
Which leads us nicely into the new world of work. For so long, the annual performance review was the absolute standard. What were its major shortcomings, and what's the new paradigm that OKRs help enable?
Well, the shortcomings of the traditional annual review are pretty well documented now. They're incredibly costly. Managers spend, on average, something like 7.5 hours per report just on the review process.
Yeah, that adds up.
And often they're just not effective. Only about 12% of HR leaders think their annual reviews are highly effective. Plus, they can be deeply demoralizing. Companies like Adobe used to see these predictable spikes in employee attrition right after the annual review period.
Ouch. So what's the alternative?
The alternative, and what really gives OKRs their human voice and makes them part of a complete system, is continuous performance management. And that's typically powered by what are called CFRs.
CFRs. What does that stand for?
Conversations, feedback, and recognition.
Conversations, feedback, recognition.
Okay, these are the ongoing dialogues, the bidirectional coaching and input, and the appreciation that make the goals come alive. They make OKRs a complete delivery system for performance and development.
That sounds much more holistic, more ongoing. And a really crucial component of this new approach, we touched on it earlier, is divorcing OKRs from compensation. Why is that specific step so vital for making this all work?
It's absolutely critical. We talked about encouraging risk-taking and preventing sandbagging. That's the main thing. If your bonus is directly tied to hitting 100% on every single goal, you're just never going to set truly aggressive aspirational objectives. You'll play it safe every time.
Right, you'll set goals you know you can hit.
Exactly. By decoupling them, OKRs become about setting future goals, pushing boundaries, learning, and aligning efforts. Compensation then becomes more of a backward-looking assessment of overall impact and performance, considering the OKRs but not solely determined by them. It just changes the psychology completely.
Adobe's transformation under Donna Morris is a prime example of this shift in action. Right? What exactly did they do?
Yeah, it's a great case study. Donna Morris, who was head of HR, completely abolished their traditional annual reviews and stack rankings.
Got rid of them entirely.
Entirely. They moved to a system they called check-in. It involved setting expectations, like quarterly goals similar to OKRs, having regular feedback conversations, and discussing career development, all explicitly decoupled from compensation decisions.
And what was the result?
It wasn't just an HR initiative that felt good. It led to a sharp, measurable drop in voluntary attrition. People stopped dreading that time of year, and it invigorated their business. It really proved that happier, more engaged employees perform better.
That really brings us to the importance of culture. You know the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. How does culture act as the sort of medium for OKRs and CFRs? How does it ensure that transparency and accountability aren't just buzzwords on a poster?
That's a great question. Andy Grove himself saw culture as a form of efficiency. He called it a manual for quicker, more reliable decisions. It sets the norms, the expectations.
Okay.
And Google's own internal research, Project Aristotle, looked at what made their teams effective. They studied 180 teams. The number one factor they identified for standout team performance was structure and clarity, which is exactly what OKRs provide.
Structure and clarity, number one. What else?
Critically, things like psychological safety, meaning dependability and impact, were also crucial. And those are all aspects that CFRs, those ongoing conversations, feedback, recognition, directly foster. Culture provides the psychological safety needed to truly engage with stretch goals, to give and receive honest feedback without fear.
So culture enables the system to actually function as intended. Let's look at Zoom Pizza, Silicon Valley company using robots to make pizza, aiming to be the Amazon of food. Very diverse teams, right? Chefs, engineers, delivery drivers. How did OKRs and CFRs help them integrate everyone?
Yeah, a real mix of people. OKRs and CFRs became their Esperanto, as the source put it, a common language for this very diverse workforce.
Esperanto, I like that.
They used OKRs to clarify roles and responsibilities. For instance, they explicitly broke out revenue goals between the marketing lead and the product lead, making it clear who owned what part of driving growth. Everyone could see how their piece fit into the bigger picture.
And did their company values connect?
Directly. Their founding principles, things like serving food to people is a sacred trust and every American has a right to delicious, affordable, healthy food, weren't just platitudes. They directly translated into specific OKRs, like one focused simply on delight customers. This shows how a strong, clearly articulated culture provides the context for powerful, meaningful OKRs.
That's a great connection. And finally, let's talk about Bono's One campaign, his nonprofit, Dataon. He called his approach factivism, using data to drive change. But they initially struggled, right?
They did. By their own admission, they initially had way too many goals. They lacked focus. OKRs brought the discipline they needed.
And what was the pivotal cultural moment for them?
It came when John Doerr, who was advising them, asked this really profound, simple question. Who are we working for? Who's the client here?
Simple question, big implications.
Huge implications.
Yeah.
It led to this deep cultural shift, the realization, as they put it, that if you want to cut a man's hair, it is better if he is in the room.
Amen.
Meaning they needed to pivot from working on Africa to working with Africa. It spurred completely new OKRs focused on things like hiring African staff, forming African advisory boards, ensuring that the people they aimed to serve had a real seat at the table and were part of designing the solutions.
That's a powerful shift from top-down aid to genuine partnership.
Absolutely. And Bono himself even noted the importance for them of seeing more red on their OKR scores, embracing the idea that truly ambitious, world-changing goals should be hard to hit. It signaled they were stretching appropriately, learning, rather than just aiming for easy wins and perfect scores.
What an incredible journey through this world of goal setting. We've really seen how objectives and key results, when they're combined with continuous performance management, those CFRs, conversations, feedback, recognition, and importantly, underpinned by a strong, transparent culture, they become this potent, proven force for operating excellence.
Yeah, it's quite a system. They provide that intense focus. They align efforts across complex organizations. They drive data-driven accountability, and they inspire teams and entire companies to achieve what often seems impossible.
And this entire framework, this way of thinking, it owes a great debt to Bill Campbell, doesn't it? Often called the coach in Silicon Valley.
Oh, absolutely. He was a bit of an unsung hero for a long time, but incredibly influential. He coached leaders like Steve Jobs, Larry Page, Eric Schmidt, teaching them, as one source put it, to look up from their computer screen.
Look up from their screens. What did he emphasize?
He emphasized relentless operating excellence, day in, day out, just getting the fundamentals right consistently. He lived by a simple motto: be better every day.
Campbell was known for focusing on those committed objectives, right?
Yeah.
Like making sure the core operations were ruthlessly efficient, making the trains run on time, as they say.
Exactly. He balanced that drive for efficiency, for hitting the committed goals, with a deep focus on protecting people, making sure processes didn't steamroll individuals. He really shaped Google's culture, balancing that relentless improvement with a deep sense of humanity.
So you now have, hopefully, a clearer map for navigating this world of goal setting, whether it's for your own career, your own projects, or for the teams you lead.
This deep dive has hopefully provided you with some powerful tools, some frameworks, and maybe some unexpected insights from these different stories.
So the final question, the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. What's your next audacious objective? What's that stretch goal, whether it's personal or professional? And maybe more importantly, how will you leverage these tools, OKRs, CFRs, the focus on culture, to not just achieve it, but to perhaps inspire those around you to achieve something truly amazing together?
The journey of discovery, of figuring out how to apply this, it doesn't end here.
It's really just getting started.
Factoring provides the working capital businesses need to thrive in an era of increasing tariffs. Contact Chris Avercent Funding to learn if your client is a factoring fit.